One of the biggest questions for the Minnesota Vikings is who is going to end up starting at center. Is it going to be incumbent Garrett Bradbury in his fourth season, held on from the previous regime? Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, Chris Cooper, Wes Phillips are like, mama, I can change him, where he was the lowest graded PFF pass blocking center each of the last 3 seasons, the trifecta. Can he turn things around, turn the beat around, and be that man at the pivot? Or is it going to be free agent Chris Reed coming in from the Colts, the pride of Mankato State University Community College? Nailed it. Or is it going to be veteran Austin Schlottmann coming from the Denver Broncos? A lot of ties with Cooper and Riscotti and Curtis Modkins, the run game coordinator, etc. Does that give him an edge? Potentially. Well, we wanted to handicap the field. We're going to go through the odds of who we think starts week 1 against the greasy, grimy Green Bay Packers. And yeah, with Bradbury, we've been sitting, waiting, wishing that the 2019 number 18 overall selection was going to pan out on that potential that made him the Grim Reacher first round center, which is, you generally don't take centers in the first round, even though you could have had Elton Jenkins or Eric McCoy, whatever. And yes, all the memes are certainly there. Is it finally time for him to give up the reins, or is it going to bring in J.C. Treader? Nah, or is it going to be Chris Reed? I do think that if the Vikings are going to start someone besides Bradbury, I think it will be Chris Reed at this stage. But again, we shall see. And here's our odds right now. Just put it on the table. So we got Bradbury at about 80% chance to start week 1. Now, like we said, is this our choice? Maybe not, but the thing that you got to give Bradbury credit for is that he started out training camp extremely poorly. Once they put the pads on in one-on-one spots in 11-on-11, it wasn't looking good. Or maybe Harrison Phillips is just that dude, right? And the number one thing that Bradbury has been deficient at the last 3 years is one-on-one situations, and defensive coordinators have been scheming to isolate him against a single defender, and then Bradbury generally gets forklifted into the quarterback. That's a trade-off that that the Vikings decided to make in 2019 when they went with an outside zone scheme center like Garrett Bradbury, great movement skills, versus a more stout center like the aforementioned Elton Jenkins, like the aforementioned Eric McCoy, who are more man gap type centers. Even though love me some stoutness, love me some anchor man, whatever, but he has done better anchoring. He has improved in one-on-one situations. He did look decent. Well, we use the term inert before, where he wasn't good, he wasn't bad, but he was average, and we're okay with average. He had a 75.9 PFF pass blocking grade, allowed him 0 goose egg D'Angelo Russell pressures on 5 passing snaps, was okay in the run game, etc. As the first team offensive line got 2 series to go, and then Chris Reed sat out the game. Now, I don't read too much into that, pun intended. I think it's just more veteran load management. I don't think that Chris Reed was benched by Kevin O'Connell. I don't buy that. But he's been exclusively running with the 2s at center ever since Garrett Bradbury's first padded practice debacle against Harrison Phillips. But also, it does need to be said that Kellen Mond, famously from the beat reporters and from fans, he's had issues with the snap, and it's not from center quarterback under center exchange. It's been in the shotgun, and Kellen Mond spent a lot of time in shotgun at Texas A&M, so it wasn't necessarily him, but the common denominator was it was generally Chris Reed, who has played a lot of guard, has played some center, but mainly in preseason. He played 23 preseason snaps for the Colts last year. He played a $196 for the Dolphins 2019. They potentially saw him as a backup center, but I mean, that's something you have to keep up on, and that's why you can't just take a normal guard and just put him at center, because guess what? A lot of teams playing in the shotgun right now, and it's sort of like long snapping. Like, you have to stay in rhythm. It's a lot of muscle memory. There's a lot of things like that. And plus, quarterbacks have to get used to it, because each center has a different spin. It has a different English on the ball, and quarterbacks like it in a different spot. So the center has to know that too. It's kind of a kerfuffle. It's kind of an ordeal. But like I said, if a center is going to start who's not Garrett Bradbury, I think it probably is going to be Chris Reed, but I think that Reed is a significant underdog at this point. Now, Austin Schlottmann is an interesting name because he came in. I think he's more of a utility backup offensive lineman. He was fine as a backup in Denver, followed Cooper and Riscotti and Modkins over here to Minnesota. I put him at about 4% to start, because even though I think that he played a great game, just from the eyeball test. He didn't, grade out well from PFF, but I think personally he played well. I think that he did a good job calling the protections and calling the scheme up front for the second team offensive line, which opened up big holes for King Kene as well as Ty Chandler, protected Kellen Mond, did some really good things against the Raiders backups. Also, over his career, he has 305 preseason center snaps, mainly in the last 3 seasons with the Broncos. So he does have experience. Now, I think that it would take Bradbury just completely falling on his face or falling on his rear end in joint practices with the Niners in the final 2 preseason games against San Francisco and Denver for Schlottmann to have a shot, and also Chris Reed would have to continue to have snap issues. But yeah, I think overall, probably still a long shot, but I think that he made a good case for making this team as a utility backup guy. And like we said, I don't think that he'll turn into Joe Berger, where he was a journeyman. Berger was a journeyman backup. Then he turned into possibly the Vikings' best offensive lineman of the 2010s decade. I think that he's more Brett Jones, where he's this spot starter that you like, a utility center guard, etc. I think that is his ceiling at the moment. And then outside candidate, never say never. Put it at 1%, because at the end of last week, that's when the rumors were flying. Darren Doogie-Wolfson, KSTP, that the Vikings are exploring options of potentially trading for center, but I read that more as Kwesi and the pro personnel departments just doing their jobs, constantly scouting, and in case someone fell on their ass at center and things really didn't come together, they then maybe explore trading for a guy like Graham Glasgow from the Broncos or Rodney Hudson from the Cardinals, etc., or signing Treader, even though I don't think that's going to happen. Kwesi, like we said, has been in the Browns organization the previous 2 seasons, so he knows J.C. Treader inside and out from the practices, from game day, etc. And maybe there's a lot of health issues going on. Who really knows? Or they could sign a guy like Matt Paradise, former Denver Bronco, former Carolina Panther. Either way, I think it's a long shot that the Vikings' Week 1 starting center isn't currently on the roster. I think it is probably going to be Bradbury. And guess what? If Bradbury steps up, does his job, and really turns things around, mazel tov. Hats off to him, man. He deserves to hang on to that starting job, and the faith that Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell and Cooper and everyone put into him, then yeah, it's gonna be paying off. But Chris Reed should and could be waiting in the wings. Austin Schlottmann should and could be waiting in the wings. And guess what? This isn't a, hey, if you're starting Week 1, you're guaranteed to have the job. This isn't the previous regime, man. This ain't it. Where, hey, if you're sucking hind teat, if you're the weak link on this offensive line, and as this O-line goes, as Kirk Cousins goes, as goes his offense, as his offense goes, as goes his team, guess what? You're going to be replaced. Like, you're going to have a short hook. You're like, hey, if you're ass in a game, we're going to pull you. We're going to substitute you. We're going to put in Chris Reed. We're going to put in Schlottmann. We're going to put in whoever. So that's what it should be. Best player plays, and if you're not up to the standard, guess what? You're going to be replaced. That's how it should play out the rest of the way. But that's it. Your thoughts are thoughts. Putting a percentage on who's going to start Week 1 center competition update. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.